We got a statement from Secretary of State Kerry and his South Korean counterpart. They say they want to talk to North Korea again if it lives up to its international obligations, and so far it really hasn't. The day here, Friday, in Seoul was spent by Kerry talking to officials, basically trying to head off a possible missile launch by North Korea. As you noted, he called it, they said it would be a huge mistake, also said it would isolate both Pyongyang and the young leader there, Kim Jong-un. Kerry did play down that report, which claims that North Korea could be closer to putting a nuclear weapon on its missiles, but he also said at the same time that they're getting closer and closer, and that a nuclear North Korea would be unacceptable. Meanwhile, on Friday, Greta, we heard once again from North Korea saying it would not abandon its nuclear program, and they're preparing for a big celebration on Monday. That's the birthday of the founder of North Korea, Kim Il-sung. Around that time, it is thought perhaps we could see that feared missile launch. Finally, I just got word, Greta, that Secretary Kerry is wheels down in Beijing. This is his next stop. China, as you and your viewers know, an important ally to North Korea, and may be important to getting Pyongyang back on track. Kerry will then go on to Japan. Japan very much in the line of fire of any possible missile launch, and so they're concerned too. Greta, back to you.
Greg, what is the new president of South Korea saying about all this?
Yeah, well, interesting change of tone we've just seen in the past 2 days, Greta, that in fact there is a possibility of dialogue, she is saying, and that she is saying that if North Korea wants to talk, perhaps she will consider it. It's interesting, we watched the press conference between the foreign minister and Secretary of State Kerry, the foreign minister pushing that line as well. Kerry seemed a little bit uncomfortable with it. It seemed a little bit new to him, but he adapted to it as well. The thinking, Greta, here is that is exactly what Kim Jong-un wanted all along. He wanted these talks, maybe face-to-face, both with South Korea and the United States, and the thinking is perhaps he might be thinking that he's winning at this game, but obviously the dangers are still there and very strong.
Greg, thank you. And Secretary of State John Kerry saying if North Korea does launch a missile, it will be a provocation that will raise people's temperatures. So how would the international community likely respond? Former UN Ambassador John Bolton joins us. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Glad to be with you.
Well, it's sort of an interesting question how they'd respond. Secretary Kerry says it would be a huge mistake if the missile was fired. I don't know exactly what a huge mistake, what the consequences of a huge mistake are. He's downplaying the report about the fact that the Pentagon has said that they have moderate confidence that they might be able to miniaturize a nuclear weapon for the mid-range missiles. And now we hear that the United States is dangling the thought of talks. So where are we, sir, on this?
Well, I'm afraid we seem to be on the verge of making mistakes we've made repeatedly in the last 20 years in the Clinton administration and the Bush administration and the Obama administration, going right back to the idea, which has been fanciful from the start, that we could talk North Korea out of its nuclear weapons program. You know, the idea that the Secretary of State goes to South Korea and says, as he did, that it's unacceptable for North Korea to be a nuclear weapons state, you know, that was music to their ears. We've been saying it's unacceptable for 20 years and not done a single thing that's really materially impeded their progress toward becoming a nuclear weapons state. And the notion that once again we would open negotiations with North Korea, you know, I once counted 4 times in the last 20 years North Korea has unambiguously pledged to give up its nuclear weapons program in exchange for tangible economic and political benefits, and 4 times it's reneged on that promise. I'm sure they would be delighted to pledge it a 5th time.
You know, I think we need to get sort of out of the weeds in looking at this. I think many people are looking at sort of getting down in the weeds and sort of step back. Every time that we get involved in these talks, and it parallels a lot what's going on with Iran, is that the real problem is not so much a missile launch, I don't think. I think the real problem is the miniaturization of a nuclear weapon that could be put on a midterm or long-range missile. And Iran and North Korea need 2 things. They need time. They're also working together at the February this year test in North Korea of the nuclear weapon. There are reportedly Iranian agents there, and so they're getting time. And all, you know, forever we've said Iran's never going to get a nuclear weapon, North Korea's not going to get a nuclear weapon, and that's going to be a real big game change. Well, that's where it's headed. I don't know how to stop it, but that's where we're headed.
Well, no, I think it's important to look at North Korea and Iran through the same prism, because for both of them as nuclear proliferators, time is a critical asset, and negotiations, which they string out, both of them very successfully these last 20 years, give them that critical asset of time to perfect their ballistic missile and nuclear programs. You know, this controversy over the DIA assessment, for example, I listened both to Secretary Kerry's words and to White House spokesman Carney's words today. They didn't really contradict that Defense Intelligence Agency estimate. They walked around it. Well, it's not a demonstrated capability to mate a warhead with a ballistic missile. No, it's not demonstrated yet. They need to test it. That's what we're talking about.
But even
I
there's
think
sort of, that's even a little bit, I mean, like the whole idea that we hear all these intelligence assessments is that, you know, we're hearing it from the same intelligence sources that missed the last 2 nuclear tests, that we got caught with our pants down. We had no idea they were even going to happen. So how in the world do we even rely on our intelligence out of a hermetically sealed country when we've got the two most incredible examples of when we had no idea something was going to happen, and it did?
No, it's very foolish to think that we have anything like adequate information to base these estimates on. And North Korea knows much of what we see, they allow us to see. So we've got incomplete information. I think that is a point that is not well understood in Congress or the general public, nor is it at all understood what connection there is between the Iranian nuclear weapons program and ballistic missile programs in North Korea. We know that they've worked together on ballistic missiles for at least 15 years, and I suspect on the nuclear programs as well. So this notion we've got ironclad confidence in where Iran's nuclear weapons program is or where North Korea's nuclear weapons program is just badly misplaced.
Ambassador, as always, thank you, sir.
Thank you.